Okay. Glennie.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for asking me, or I think I put my name forward actually. So, but anyway, it's nice to be here. It's nice to do something for the outside world, because I feel as if I live in this little bubble. So it's really nice to do something that's bringing me outside. So I'm local artist. A little bit about me. I got 12 books in print, all about earth-related things, trees, herbs, medicines, rewilding. I've got a cookbook, a herbal, yeah, native tree book. All of this kind of related subjects that I've been absolutely passionate about for well, all my life really, but increasingly over the last 20 years particularly. And I also produce the Earth Pathways Diary, quick plug of the diary, which inspires our connection to the land. So very much my passion is for native plants, and my passion is very much for rewilding. So this group is fantastic. I feel it's just so amazing that we've got so many people interested in it as well, and the councils, and just feel as if its time has come. So I wanted to kick off with looking at the pros and cons of natives naturalized plants, and asking the question, is there room for both in Rewilding Wirksworth? So a native plant, what is a native plant? A native plant is a plant that's been here for 10,000 years. When the land bridge between us and Europe melted, the ice melted, the plants that were left here on this island are our native plants. So they've been here for 10,000 years plus, and they've created huge interconnected relationships with the wildlife, particularly with the insects and the butterflies and the moths, and particularly with the underground mycelium. So they've been here a very, very long time. They have huge amounts of interconnection. The naturalized plants are plants, they're garden escapes, and they become naturalized. In other words, from 1600s onwards, when the 1500s actually onwards, when the explorers went out and brought back plant samples from other countries and began to populate mostly the gardens of the rich in the first place, with these exotic plants from other places. That, if you think about it, 500, 400 years ago, so not very long ago, that these plants, these naturalized plants, have been here. So the naturalized plants are the plants that they're here, they're in our gardens, and they've adapted, and they're spreading seed, and the seed is now spreading out into our countryside. So generally no more than 400 years old, living here. So they haven't built up the same amount of eco-connections. Whereas the native plants, it's deep ecology. It's 10,000 years deep ecology. So they have huge power to very quickly affect an environment. They affect from the insects that arrive to feed on them. that then in turn it has snowball effects that constantly affect everything else in the whole spectrum of wildlife. So the plants and the trees particularly as well are the sort of beginning, and without them, without the native plants, the wildlife suffers, as we've seen. So putting the native plants back first is to me the most important thing we can do, and the native trees back as well. I just want to show you this amazing book, which is Harrop's Wildflowers. And in this, he goes through every plant in here, lovely photos. Every plant in here, he tells you whether it's actually native or whether it was introduced. And I've had this book about 2 years, and honestly, there's so many surprises in here. Harrop's, absolutely wonderful. Another ID, well, I'm just doing the ID plant. Roger Phillips is also a very wonderful ID plant, native plant, Wildflowers of Britain. And again, it's photographs, but he does them season by season. So it might have the same plant in several times, but in different seasons, so that it really helps with identification. So so that's we've got native plants and we've got naturalized plants. And the question is, do we, I mean, like I said, some of them, you'd be surprised, plants you thought were natives actually have been around for 400 years. If we're looking at making verdures look beautiful, for example, many of these all of these naturalized plants, that's why they become naturalized, have a good relationship with the insects. They're good pollinators, and it's a possibility that we don't get completely tight on just using the native plants specifically. Because like I say, there's quite a few that actually aren't native, but you would think they are because they're everywhere. And they're here anyway. And that's what plants do. Plants evolve. That's what nature does. That's what all of nature does, is evolves. So I used to be a complete native plant, you know, only native plants. But I've kind of softened a little bit in my understanding, because a lot of them are really good pollinators and perhaps worth considering. So that's our two main natives and naturalized, and then we've got various other naturalized plants like the Mediterranean herbs. The chives, the oregano, thyme, rosemary, lavender, they've not evolved to the point where they're able to set their own seed. We have to do it for, you know, we have to grow the seed. You won't find any of those plants self-pollinating in your garden, but they're great pollinators. So that there are also possibilities for considering for in the town. I wouldn't plant anything but true natives outside of the streets of the town, and I wouldn't advocate that either. So basically, yeah, by planting native plants, we're increasing the wildlife and the ecosystems. And although, yes, it takes time to build them up, it doesn't take that long. Look at Stony Wood. I mean, Stony Wood, it's incredible what's happened in Stony Wood in such a short space of time. In actual fact, such a short space of time, and all the native plants, everything there has arrived there It's just arrived. Nobody's planted anything. And there's a huge, I'm going to do another plant survey there this year. I did one a few years ago, and I can't remember, it was 50 odd plants, but I think it's a lot more now. And I'm seeing more. And walking around Wirksworth, I'm seeing an increase in native plants where there weren't any. And we've got so many. We're really lucky here. We've got the quarries, and we've got a lot of footpaths and woodland. Nobody's improving woodland, are they? Apart from obviously there are moves at the moment to improve woodland by taking the sycamore out, which is what they're doing in Shiny Cliff, because that is a non-native plant that's become an invasive plant, and is ruining the wood in a way, because it's changing. They've got such big leaves that they block the light from the forest floor, and all the usual plants that would grow on the forest floor can't grow anymore because they've not got enough light. So sycamores are changing the face of our woodlands, and like I say, in Shiny, a lot of places all over the country, they're starting to take sycamore out. So yeah, there are naturalised plants and trees, like the rhododendrons, that are doing a lot of damage. So but when they were planted, nobody knew. I remember speaking to a woman in her 80s, one of the Shining Cliff, founders, and she planted the sycamores with great happiness. She thought they were wonderful, never realising what was going to happen. So that's why I think it's really more important to actually be clear that we're planting natives. But within the town, there might be, if we're looking for an increase in flowers, if we're looking for things to look beautiful, there are naturalised, non-invasive natives that we could plant to bring in the beauty. And all this brings me in a way to the cottage garden, to the benefits of rewilding your own garden. So that's what I've been doing really for the last 20 years. I moved into a house on Derby Road, and the garden was completely overgrown to the point where there were swathes of white grass, thick white grass over everything. And so we moved in sort of September time, and as the winter went on and the grass sort of receded, it revealed a garden under there, it revealed a pond, it revealed all sorts of a path that we didn't know was there. And but when the spring came, it revealed a lot of plants. And it turned out that all the plants that had survived that garden being neglected for quite a long time, I think, before we moved in, they were all natives. So it's interesting that I think that garden was a cottage garden. The old cottage garden, as people planted, they only had the natives, unless you were rich. You only had the native plants. So you would have made choices. You would have made choices to plant beautiful ones, for beautiful flowers for picking. You would have made choices to plant the herbs and the medicinal plants that you would have used, because that's all you had. And you would have planted a certain amount of plants for greens, for either putting in the stew pot, the soup pot, or eating raw. And this is the thing about the native plants. You've got that whole spectrum. You've got beauty, you've got medicine, and you've got food. So anyway, that garden set me off. And I ended up writing my Letting in the Wild Edges book, which is a seasonal guide to rewilding your garden with native plants, how to make the medicines from the native plants, and cooking. And cooking with the native plants, how to use them for your food. And so that's really set me off on a really big journey. And I feel that by bringing native plants into our town gardens, we're helping to create more diversity and stronger ecosystems around the town. Because if you think about it, all the flying insects, all the birds, all the butterflies and moths, there's no walls for them. So we're just one big ecosystem. So if our town gardens had more native plants in it, all those creatures we're trying to encourage in, that there'll be more of them, because they'll be able to find more of the food they need within the town, within our gardens. And so I kind of invite you to think about this, to think about bringing more native plants into your garden, and to look at, well, the beautiful ones, for example, primroses, cowslips, violets, columbine, Welsh poppies, you know, scabious, oxeye daisies, lady smock. I won't go any further. But there are hundreds of very, very beautiful native flowers that, if they were in our gardens, they would be also doing a lot towards rewilding Wirksworth.
Hiya.
Hiya.
Sorry I'm late joining you.
No worries.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I can pick salad. I can go out there now and pick some salad. Not a huge amount, not this time of year, but I can pick things to eat just from the leaves. You know, throw in the soup. So there's a lot of benefits, as well as learning a little bit more about the old ways of healing ourselves through the native plants. I mean, there's a lot of advice and books and learning to be done around the medicinal plants. It's all been verified by science. It isn't folklore. It does work. And the more that you actually do it for yourself, and you actually see that it works, then the more you're hooked into the joy, really, of growing these plants and using them, and increasing the biodiversity of the town from the point of view of our gardens. So I've had big gardens, and I've got a tiny little garden up on Wash Green, but I'm still growing masses of native plants. I give them away. All the seed has come from, nearly all the seed, I won't say every single seed, but nearly all the seeds have come from plants I've collected around here while I've been walking about over the last 20 years. It's just like, there's plenty of that. I'll take some seed, I'll grow it. And then the next time, and when you grow it in your garden, of course, you're there to catch that optimum moment for seed. So I'm increasing my seed bank all the time. And last year I seemed to have a ridiculous amount of seed. So when Wilder Wirksworth started, and Katie put forward the idea that we might start a small group for growing seeds for rewilding Wirksworth, I was really pleased because I didn't know how I was going to actually cope with growing the amount of seed I collected last year. So that's really good. And the growers very kindly have offered us some space to do it, pots and organic compost. So thank you, growers. Thank you, Rosemary. So we could perhaps think about setting up, or as we have COVID, it might be, well, we might not be in such a tight lockdown by the time we want to start growing seeds, which I always think, you know, beginning of March is a good time to start growing seeds. So hopefully by the beginning of March we might be able to either safe distance they get apart, or be apart and do it together, or collect from a collection point and collect some seeds and pots and compost to grow at home. And do pop round 18 Wash Green, do pop round and in the you know, once things start growing again, and see what I've got, because I've got quite a lot already, plants ready to give away. And see plants growing in situ and see how beautiful they are. And you know, then it's just like, no, they're not weeds. They're useful plants and they're beautiful plants, and they could be a bit of extra food as well. So I think the final thing to touch on is techniques for planned rewilding schemes around Wirksworth. So different plants work well in different places, and we've got the vergers idea on the go, and often this is done by taking out the grass and planting them into, I mean, people say native plants, oh, they need poor soil. You know, I've not found that at all. I found if you give them some really good compost, they grow really, really well, and they grow much bigger than they grow out in the poor soil of the fields. So I personally have not found that to be true. So yeah, you can take the grass out and put lots of seed in. You know, these packs of mixed packs of seed that you can buy. That the only trouble with that is very often it is the strongest ones that will win anyway. And within there, you can miss out on some good plants. So what I propose is a kind of mix, really, of some people growing native plants to, especially if you can get them to second year plants, the perennials. The perennials are the really strong ones that you can mix them in to any planting scheme. And like Emma said, you know, some of the vergers may not have much going on in them, so you can plant a good strong perennial within that, and it will probably hold its own because it will already have a good root structure. So yes, it does take time, but you know, the quarries, we've got the quarries are just awash with the most unusual native plants. It's interesting, it doesn't take that long. It's a mixture, really, isn't it? You've got to have a bit of patience. The lanes, I was walking around the lanes, you know, the lanes are, you know, the Puzzle Garden lanes, and there's a fair amount of native plants taking hold in the lanes. And I was thinking that you could actually slip a few more in. And they would have to be the woodland plants, the plants that are happy in the shade, or damp plants that don't mind the damp. So, you know, plants like woodruff, you know, spread like crazy, and you only need to get tiny bit in and then leave it for a few years, and off they go. Or the primroses, we could plant more primroses along hedgerows, you know, behind the school, and there's plenty of places where we could slip some more plants in. And another, which I think is a really good rewilding ploy, is Sean was talking about his small forest, but I'm suggesting even smaller, three trees, 3 native trees, such as a hawthorn, a crabapple, and an elder, all providing fruit for the birds. And within that small little, you can plant them quite close together, they won't mind, they'll just grow, interweave and grow amongst themselves. Within that, you're creating a little ecosystem that the birds would absolutely love, and then you can plant native trees around the bottom. So that is actually quite a small plot. It's a verge plot in a way. And trees are brilliant for changing the ecosystem because the roots go really far down and make connections with the mycorrhiza, and then the mycorrhiza coming up nearer to the surface then make connections with the plants, and then you're starting to get all this interconnectiveness of a real ecosystem. So I think that's about it, really. Yes, I think that's about it, really. I'm happy to share my seeds and talk about what plants, if we need to buy seeds, what plants might work well in different places. And I'm happy as well if anyone's interested in learning a bit more about the medicinal properties of their weeds. I'm quite happy to help get a study group off the ground if anyone's interested in that. So yeah, that's all from me. Thank you for listening.
Wow, thank you so much, Glennie. Really, really interesting. Thank you. In fact, I hadn't been at Wirksworth long before I met Glennie, and she said, "Come up to my garden, and I'll give you some plants." And she did, and they're now growing in my garden, which is lovely. So she's it's lovely. Actually, we have got about sort of 5 to 10 minutes if people want to ask Glennie a question at this stage. I mean, we are going to then have our little breakout rooms and talk about, you know, what we want to do from here. So obviously lots of ideas. Does anybody have anything? Oh, yes. And see your name. Sarah. Got Sarah Banks.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Hiya. Thanks, Glennie, for the talk. That was brilliant. We've just moved to Wirksworth. We've got a tiny garden. Most of it's... Sorry, can you hear me okay?
No, I'm just looking for you. I'm looking for you on the... I can't see you. Sarah. Okay, yes, I can see you now,
we've just moved to Wirksworth. We've got a tiny garden and most of it's gravelled over, but we've dug out a patch which is about 1.5 meters by 0.5 meter. So I dug it out about, probably about a month ago, and then I've not done anything with it since, and it seemed quite clayey, the soil. But I just wondered if you had any recommendations for something we could put in there. And for this year, I mean, I would love to have something that's medicinal and beautiful, and also the herbs, but I think for this year we just want to put something that's going to be really straightforward for us.
Yes.
So I don't know if it'd be something like primroses, or I'm not very knowledgeable, but if you have, I'd love to hear your ideas about what we could put in.
The primrose would be fab. They're a springtime, but you could also scatter them with oxeye daisies, which also flower for a long time and just look great.
Yeah.
There's all kinds. If you want to come round and see me, I could give you some plants.
Thank you.
18 wash green.
Yeah. Is it a good time to plant things now?
2 more weeks.
Yeah, a bit longer. And I'd put half a bag of compost in there.
Okay.
On your clay, because clays are difficult soil substance for plants. So they do better with compost. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm really, really happy. Where are you?
We're on the causeway.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that's not far.
No, I'd love to pop over. Thank
Yeah,
you.
do. Yeah, do. Yeah, great. Because I've got lots of plants, and that's my my love is to give them away. So
Okay, amazing.
Thanks. Thank you. I think, Suzanne, did you have a question?
Just a quickie from the plant life discussion from Karen from Plant Life. Was Karen?
Kate.
She was saying the advantages of way.
Oh,
you've broken up. I can't hear what you've said.
I think we might need to come back to Suzanne because she's frozen in time.
Yeah.
Suzanne, can you hear us? You froze up then.
Did you hear what I said?
No.
Okay, so the lady from Plant Life at the previous discussion was recommending, ideally, for verges, for instance, to use locally grown seeds. When she was asked how you might obtain locally grown seeds, she did say she'd look into it, but there wasn't an obvious answer. She was talking about seed packs and different types of seeds, but we just heard you say that you do grow locally grown seeds, you've collected them. So I imagine you might be a source for some of these seeds that could be sown.
Some of the seeds, I think by next year, if we are gathering seed, we could have plenty of seed for throwing in the verges. But I tend to, because I just feel they're so precious, my seeds I tend to grow in pots, and I tend to grow like quite thickly, and then just break them up. I don't break them into single plants. I break them into little plant clusters, because I feel as if when they grow in the wild, they're very often in thick clusters, and then the strongest one or two or three will win and give you a good plant because they're the strongest. But broad sow, that just throwing the seed, you lose a lot of seed. Birds will peck it, the mice will carry it off.
Thank you.
So you've got to have, that's why when you buy these bags, you buy them great big bags, don't you? Well, I haven't got that kind of proportions.
Thank you. And I know, Glennie, you want to sort of help set up a native plant growers group, don't you? So hopefully there will be several of us that can work on that together, which would be... So
out the discussion, and anyone that is keen, perhaps I can give my phone number at the end or something, and my email address. I think, yeah,
that would be great.
Yeah.
Okay. Did Peter?
You're muted, Peter.
You're on mute, Peter.
Yeah, sorry. You're right what you say about transferring into pots. You get a better root system when they're in pots. And the advantage of pots is you can pot them in any time. You can get your trowel and pot them in any time. Worse seed, better sown in the early spring. If we've got so many plants in pots, they could come later whenever we find somewhere to put them.
Yeah.
So that's good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, we can just save them until we've got somewhere to put them, and then if there's several people with the pots all ready to go, off we go.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're right.
Lovely. So, sorry,
Alison.
Alison. Don't pronounce your name wrong, I'm afraid.
Harrod. It's a bit.
Harrod, sorry. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask Glennie, you were talking about the kind of the native plants book and the surprises in there. I just wondered if you had an example. Like, what was the biggest surprise in the book of something that you thought was a native plant but wasn't?
A purple toadflax. In the walls, you see them in the walls all over Wirksworth. Red valerian. That's not a native plant. That's from France. That's you know, not a native. There's quite a lot of them that you see. They're growing everywhere, and you think, oh, they're natives, but actually they're not. You'll have to, if you're fascinated by that, get Harrop's. Honestly, it's a fascinating book. It's a really, really good book. Yeah.
Thanks. I just
Alison Richards also had her hand up.
Oh, Alison, yeah. Sorry.
Yes, I want to say, I mean, I'm very aware of the difference between the acid and the limestone soils, and I wondered how many plants won't grow on the other.
Nessie.
The other thing, Glennie,
is Nessie with us? Nessie's the one for this, to answer this. Is Nessie with us?
I don't
well,
think
she's on gritstone, isn't she?
Yeah, but she knows all about the different soils.
Yes.
So Martin says he's here, but he doesn't seem to be.
Nessie is here.
Oh, is she?
Oh.
That's Nessie needs to answer that one.
Oh, I didn't hear it. Sorry, I'm making dinner.
Nessie!
We'll all be around in about half an hour.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Say again.
We'll all be round in half an hour.
Oh, okay. That's great. Yeah, you can have a Brussels sprout each.
Alison Richards got a question for you, Nessie.
Okay.
It's about which plants won't tolerate limestone, or on the other hand, are much happier on limestone.
Yeah, it will. They will be different to some of the ones that I've got on up here at Allport Heights, because we're on gritstone.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think we're going to do a survey, aren't we, Katie?
Yeah. Yes.
And Glennie, we're all going
limestone.
Yeah, so we could see what's growing and go from there. But yeah, there's you know, they have a whole different habitat. I mean, stony wood, that's all limestone, so it's quite different stuff that I've got up here. So yeah, it is, if that's what you're asking, they are very different plants in limestone than there are on gritstone.
And the Dales and Green Hill is all limestone.
Yeah, yeah.
And Chapel Lane, where I live, is.
Yeah, I mean, most of Wirksworth, I would say, is limestone, isn't it, really? It's my Bowl Hill and Allport, we're all gritstone.
Not all of Bowl Hill, because Barrel Edge is grit.
Right, right.
I think the limestone goes underneath at the railway, roughly.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the limestone goes underneath about 170 feet down. And it's a layer of clay and shale between the limestone and the gritstone.
But there are still lead mines in Bowl Hill.
Yeah, but they're about 170 feet down.
Yeah.
Because of the way the limestone goes underneath.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fault, isn't it? It lies on the top of the gritstone. Yeah.
Underneath it.
I think Wirksworth splits in two. If you look at centre of Wirksworth, the bottom half of Wirksworth, Derby Road, right down at the bottom, are going gritstone, where the top area going up for Middleton and so on is all limestone. It's like divided in two, really, Wirksworth.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. We need to make sure that we're putting the right plants in the right place.
Yeah, the right places.
Environment, the right.
Yeah. Does Harrop's help with that, Glennie?
Sorry?
Does Harrop's help with that, on which soils they grow best on?
Oh, I don't know.
I've got that book now because Nessie recommended it.
I think he does, actually. Yeah, I think he does. Says whether it grows on limestone or, yes, he does, sandy soil. Yeah.
Harrop's is also really good because it says whether it's, you know, if it comes up here or whether it's more of a southern plant. And so it's quite good so that you can you can work out what the plant is by where it's most commonly grown. So it's great for that.